Thanks for clicking. My name is Mark Mitchell. I'm a mortgage broker here in London, Ontario. We had a number of developments this week in China's real estate crisis. Evergrande had its $45 million bond payment due at the end of this week, and we also had a number of missed payments, defaults, and downgrades for the Chinese real estate sector as the real estate crisis continued to worsen throughout China. So what I want to do today is go through the major developments on Evergrande this week, as there were quite a few. Then we'll do a brief run through of the late payments, defaults, and downgrades that happened this week, and finish off by going through the S&P report showing the extent of the crisis. This is the end of the month, so next week we will have the real estate data out for October, and it's highly anticipated that prices probably went up as the fall market returned to normal. So make sure you click like and subscribe to get those real estate updates. But for now, let's get into the China update. Earlier this week, Chinese authorities actually encouraged Evergrande's founder, Hu Kaiya, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, they encouraged the founder to actually pay the bondholders using his own money. This is kind of unprecedented, and you would never have seen that in the West, as you just can't imagine seeing Hank Paulson ask Dick Foles of Lehman Brothers to pay the investors out of his own money.
Dick is trotting around the world with his hat in his hands. No one will give him any money.
It just wouldn't happen. So I thought that development was really interesting, as it's a very different form of capitalism in China. Related to that, Chinese local authorities announced that they were going to be monitoring Evergrande's bank accounts to make sure that their money isn't going to pay foreign bondholders, but is going to pay for the construction of the houses that have already been paid for by the local residents. So again, very different forms of capitalism. The local authorities are actually encouraging and monitoring the bank accounts of a private company to make sure that the local residents are getting what they paid for. Whole new, different type of capitalism than China. But all eyes were on whether or not Evergrande would make its payment due today for the $45 million. They had missed that payment 1 month ago, but were given a 30-day grace period. Much to the applause of foreign bondholders and I'm sure local real estate developers, Evergrande did make the payment, which will buy it some time as it tries to restructure its debt. So the crisis is far from over. It's definitely not fixed or anything. This buys Evergrande a little bit of time. They do have well over $100 million in bond payments due next month that have been from when they missed late payments in October. So November 11th is when they have that major payment due, and in the meantime they have agreed to meet with foreign bondholders to discuss a payment plan or restructuring their debt or seeing what can be worked out. As obviously the foreign bondholders, it's becoming more and more obvious that they're not going to get their money in a timely fashion or at all.
And I explained to you that there was the possibility you might have to take some kind of loss.
Yeah. I think I want my money back.
The foreign bondholders and Evergrande officials have signed non-disclosure agreements, as neither the bondholders nor officials from Evergrande want getting out how bad the state of Evergrande's finances actually are, because it could trigger a domino effect, more so than it's already occurred. Speaking of a domino effect, Modern Land, which we talked about last week and the week before, missed its bond payment again this week on a $250 million bond payment, and it is also set to meet with its lawyers and then its creditors to see about restructuring their debts. So we're kind of seeing a pattern here in the past few weeks. We've seen more and more trouble occurring with these real estate developers as the contagion from Evergrande spreads. And now I think they tried to handle these problems themselves, tried to raise the cash themselves, and as we noted, the real estate market has sunk so much that their assets, they can't sell them off. So they're having to meet with creditors to try to see if they can restructure their debts. So the meeting with their creditors, while it's good that they're not just pretending it's not occurring, it is a sign that the crisis is worsening as they've realized that they cannot make the payments themselves. Speaking of not being able to make their payments, Keza is a real estate developer that we spoke about last week, had their credit downgraded to the lowest ever by S&P this week. As the credit agency noted, Keza's capital structure is unsustainable given the company's stable near-term debt maturities, weakened liquidity, and inadequate free cash flow through 2022. It's not really funny. It's not funny at all. It's just kind of amusing to see a major credit agency describe a major Chinese real estate developer like Frank Gallagher.
I have no money and no promise of any coming my way anytime soon.
So yeah, to translate S&P's statement, Keza has a lot of debt, doesn't have any money, and doesn't have any real plans to get any more money in the future. Hence, they downgraded their credit. Speaking of downgrades, we had 2 more developers added to our list. Last week we were up to 12. This week we added Yango, which owes over $12 billion to foreign bond investors, had their credit downgraded, and Oceanwide, who actually has some developments here in the West and has been trying to dump their properties in the West, had some of their collateral seized for their loans. So we've had more missed payments, more downgrades, and now they're even starting to seize collateral of these real estate developers. This isn't the sign of a crisis that's getting better. It is good news that these companies are starting to meet with the bondholders to see if they can restructure it. But that's kind of a last-ditch effort before formal default starts to happen. So it's like when you call up, say, Rogers to try to renegotiate your cell phone bill. If you can't come to an agreement, then it's default and it goes to collections. Very, very similar process here. It's better than just not answering the phone and letting it go to collections. But this is kind of what's happening right now in China, as now these developers unable to deal with this crisis on their own, not able to raise the funds by themselves, are getting multiple downgrades, so their credit's getting hit, and they are about to go to collections, so they're talking to the holders of the debt. Looking at the entire crisis, the S&P released a report saying that nearly 1/3 of Chinese real estate developers could have problems paying their debt in the next year if this crisis does not subside, and it doesn't look like it will. The report also noted that even if Evergrande makes its bond payment on Friday, which it did, but even if that bond payment is made, that it's likely that the company will still default on its debt. And another analyst actually called Evergrande living dead, as it kind of struggles along, making patchwork on its debt issues, but it's almost as though the writing is on the wall. Evergrande is going to fail, and then we're going to see what happens next. It's good news that it does look like it's going to be a managed failure, as Beijing is starting to get more and more vocal, encouraging its founder to pay its debts, and they're monitoring Evergrande, the bank accounts, like we talked about earlier. So it does look like the government is getting in on this, and a few weeks ago it didn't look like they were. So that's definitely good news that the power of the central government will be behind this crisis, or at least have their hands around it. But we'll continue to have updates as they come out. We do seem to have more and more updates every week. As we noted, we started with 1 major developer in having problems, Evergrande, and now we're up to 14. But we will have developments as they come out. Click like and subscribe to get those, and we'll have that weekly China update next Friday. Thank you.